Okay, Tynan and Dulcie, thank you so much for coming on Northern Vibe. This interview is going to be a little bit different from all the other interviews. Tynan, I'm going to let you lead it, and hopefully we're just going to have a magnificent chat. So first, I'll get you all to introduce yourself.
My name's Tynan. I come to this conversation with many life experiences, but at the heart of the relationship that I have with both of you stems my lived experience of suicide. And as has been our relationship for a number of years now. And yeah, I'm just thrilled to be having this conversation with Dulcie tonight.
Dulcie.
My name's Dulcie Bird, and I'm with the CEO of the Dr Edward Koch Foundation.
And so what we're going to talk about tonight is the founding of the foundation, because it is wrapping up, how it started, your life journey in it. And I think that's an interesting story. And of course, I don't mind saying this publicly, what the Dr Edward Koch Foundation contributed to Cairns and Far North Queensland generally is nothing small. I think you should be, although pride is a sin, I think you should be very proud of your achievements and proud of what the Dr Edward Koch Foundation accomplished. So Tynan, let's dive right in.
Absolutely. And Dulcie, you started it off really, really well, like CEO of Dr Edward Koch Foundation. Personally, I would call you friend, inspiration, and a great dancer. But Dulcie, I want to start somewhere a little bit off topic, and I'm really interested before we start tonight to just give us a bit of an overview. What was your childhood like, and where did you imagine you'd be, like when you were a child, where did you imagine you'd be today?
Right. Well, my childhood, I was born here in Cairns, and went to Edge Hill School. I lived at the top of Edge Hill, and between our house and Edge Hill School was all cane field. And we were a large family, 9 of us, 7 children, six girls and a boy. And we had a good childhood in that it was the same as everyone else. We were poor, but everybody back then was poor in the neighbourhood, and you learned to deal with it. We always had our 3 meals on the table and so forth. So in terms of wondering where I was going to be when I was a child, I think that I wanted to be a teacher. And back then, to become a teacher meant you had to have money. Families had to have money. And of course, I had to leave school when I was 15 and go out to work like everyone else did back then. And so the dream of being a teacher was, I could probably say, put on hold, because in actual fact, although I'm not a trained teacher, I've been teaching other forms of in my work, such as our suicide prevention workshops and being a mental health first aid instructor. So I managed the dream in the end, I guess. The other dream, of course, was to always have my own house and be comfortable. Because when you're poor, you grow up wanting, a few more luxuries than you had when you were young. And I think I always wanted more for my children than what we had. And I think my husband and I were able to provide for them. Sadly, I lost my husband 15 years ago, but yeah, we've got grandchildren, 5 grandchildren now, and they certainly get more than my children got, and so forth. And that's how life goes on. Yeah.
It's a really interesting narrative that at 15 you wanted to be a teacher. Life didn't lead you down that path, but as you mentioned, you've achieved so many amazing things across Far North Queensland, and one of them has been the legacy that you're still continuing on around your mental health first aid and your other trainings that you've delivered. But before we get there, Dulcie, I'm really interested in, as a 15-year-old, if you can just walk us through what drove you to become the person you are today, the person that's led the Edward Koch Foundation for 29 years, but what actually drove you to be there? Like what in life led you there?
I've always been determined. if I set myself a goal, I always try to follow it through to the end. And so through life, I had goals. When I, as a young girl, I married young. Back in those days, you had to leave work. I started off at CREB, which then became FNQEB, which is now Ergon Energy. And I was an in records. And after I left there, I became a mother and didn't work. And then about 9 years later, that organisation asked me to come back because they could now employ married women. So I went back and enjoyed many, many years there. So all up over the years, I spent about 28 years in there, and I'd worked myself up to a records administration officer. I left that job deciding that I would probably not work, or if I did work, I would take a different path. And the very next day, there was an advertisement in the paper for Queensland Health for a records administration officer. Well, it was just tailor-made for me, so I applied and got it. And that's where my journey towards this foundation began, because I was the records administrator at Queensland Health, and when it was decentralised or centralised, and went back to Brisbane, most of the departments, I went to work for Professor Ernest Hunter, who is a psychiatrist. He was the Cape psychiatrist, and he was tasked with setting up the University of Queensland Cairns campus, Department of Social and Preventative Medicine. And so I worked with him, and he was one of the founding directors of the foundation, and that's where it all began. And obviously after that, in my determination to be the best I could in that role, I went and did a uni degree. So my university came late in life. I was actually at university. I think my daughter and I probably were the first mother and daughter in the same class at university at JCU.
Obviously, I love that you used the word determined, because as someone that I've known, I would say for 10 years now, determined would be definitely a word that I would use to describe you. And when I first came to meet you, it was after discovering that I had one of those things called a lived experience of suicide, and I was warmly welcomed into the Cairns Suicide Prevention Task Force that was part of the Edward Koch Foundation. I've always been a little bit admiring of it, but also really keen to know, how is it that you've always been able to take control of like your creativity? Because when I've sat around the table with you, there's been more than one occasion that you've sat at a table and people have said, let's do this, and you've gone, I'm going to do it. And it could be the biggest project ever, but you just go, yep, let's do it. How have you been able to consistently do that for so many years?
Well, you're right, determination and a desire to have things happen, not talk about things, not have to discuss for many years before something gets done. I like to see it done. I like it to happen, and so I try as hard as I can to make that happen. And if I have to do it myself because everyone, isn't keen or whatever, I do. And then usually people jump on the bandwagon as they see it's happening, and it gets done that much better and faster.
You really have achieved so much for this community, and it's been an absolute privilege to watch you achieve so much. But I'm really interested in some of the, I guess you might call them the bloopers of your career and what you've achieved with the Edward Koch Foundation and the work that you've done, what are some of the things that have not gone so well, or the things that you've sat back and went, I just really didn't imagine that would ever happen along your journey?
Oh, are you talking on a serious note there? Because I think if we're talking about disappointments or things that didn't happen, was our youth suicide prevention workshop, which was developed. A lot of hard work went into the workshop by the FNQ Suicide Prevention Task Force, and a woman called Ruth Crouch, who was determined to try and make sure that no other families had to go through what she had gone through by losing a son to suicide. And so we had put a lot of effort and many, many years into developing this suicide prevention workshop for youth, and we trialled it at the Redlands State College. Back in the day when suicide was frowned upon to be talked about in schools, and we had really good reviews. Everything went well. We always made sure it was a safe environment for the young people, and the trial was just fabulous with fabulous results. But after that, we couldn't get funding, so the workshop after that was only ever presented to sporting groups or on an ad hoc basis. So I think one of my disappointments is that I wasn't able to, get that happening on a much more consistent level.
Mm. So we've just got a picture of Ruth up there, but do keep talking, so I'll just put stuff up while we're there. And all these hyperlinks for all the listeners out there, I promise you will go up into the comment screen.
Mm.
Thanks for sharing, Dulcie. And you really have, determination is one thing, but also I guess that resilience that you've got, that you've had knockbacks and knockbacks. I'm just really, really keen to explore, what is it about suicide prevention? What is it about supporting the community and trying to make a change? Like, what is that for you? Like, what does that mean for you to be working in the space that you've done, and at times without funding, without the backing of big entities, but you've still kept going? What is it about it for you?
Because we have our slogan here, every life matters. And I have always thought that. I've always thought that people are important. I've had a great passion for making sure that that I try to be the best I can be when I'm engaging with people, and making sure that they never feel that I'm judgmental or in any way frowning upon what they do or whatever. I just think I take people as they come, and when they come, not so much as desired as people want, we just try and ensure that their life is better.
Mm-hmm. And from that, like, you definitely have an ability to connect with people, no matter who they are, where they come from, what their ethnicity is, what their gender is. I'm just really interested in one angle, because you've achieved so much with First Nations peoples as well. And that can be sometimes really, really hard to get into. I'm really interested in, how did that come about, and what worked for you to really connect with First Nations people and deliver some in some cases, some very innovative psychoeducation programs around suicide, around education? How did that all come about?
Probably from my roots growing up here in Cairns. When I went to high school at Cairns High, Yarrabah didn't have a high school. So they came across on the ferry to Cairns High. So a lot of my classmates were Indigenous people from Yarrabah, and when I go over and do my workshops over there, I'm simply often reconnecting with women and men that I went to school with that were friends back then. So that sort of gave me an acceptance in that community because of my connections with those people. But as I move further into the communities of the Cape, I always take people as I find them, and always am very conscious and caring of their culture. And I think I've just been accepted that way. Yeah, because of that. Yes. I once had I went into one community once, and I was the lady I'd been speaking to on the phone for a couple of months leading up to going to do these workshops. I thought with my name, Dulcie, which is a common name in the communities, although not so common down here in Cairns, and Bird, of course, the name, I thought, maybe she thinks I'm an Indigenous woman and I'd better tell her before I get there so there's no surprises. And I said to her, did she know that I was not an Indigenous woman? And she said to me, Dulcie, do you care about people? And I said, yes, I do. And she said, isn't that all that matters? And I thought, what a great answer. And I was really accepted in that community. And I think I'd like to think that my caring nature, as I go into any community, stands me in good stead.
Wow, that's a beautiful, beautiful moment, and definitely testament to the person that you are. What's it like? What's been your proudest moment in terms of the work that you've done with working in First Nations communities? I know that we had lunch last week, and you shared something that was posted in Mount Isa paper, and a lady's comment around you've done more than Queensland Health had done for that lady and the community that she represented. But from your perspective, what's been the proudest moment that you've had with working with
Well,
our First Nations
firstly,
peoples?
that was such a big, wide statement for her to make, and of course not true, but I like to think that we have contributed a lot. And in terms of what I've achieved, working in those communities, was our workshops. They are culturally appropriate, and I think, again, if I could tell another story, I met a man once, and I was to work with him on a project down here in Cairns. And when he walked into the room, he said, oh, he said, I know you. He said, you saved my life. And I said, oh, so I looked a bit closer. And I'm very fortunate that I've got a good memory, and I can try and remember everyone I've ever had in my workshop, which is probably impossible because I've had thousands in my workshops over the years. But I did remember this man coming to my workshop up in one of the Cape communities. I'll keep this anonymous, but I said, oh, I do remember your name and the year of the workshop, and being able to tell him the year and the place that I remembered him. Then he opened up to me and said that he was feeling very suicidal before my workshop. And then after the workshop and having a talk with me, it changed his life. And that is just such wonderful feedback to get, you know. And so I think when I hear those just stories and other anecdotal stories from people that tell us of things that have happened, they're the things I feel proud of, that I've been able to contribute in some small way.
That's a really beautiful story, and thank you for sharing. It also highlights the power of our words and the power of things that we can do. And a little thing that I guess I would refer to as compassion, and treating people for who they are in a way that is respectful of where they come from, no matter who they are or what they've done, and how by having that compassionate mindset can really help to change people's lives. Dulcie, I'm really interested in continuing down this narrative around conversations, and I'm sure that you've promoted the power of conversations, and you've had many conversations that really help people to understand how a conversation can help save a life. But is there any conversations that you've had that you can reflect on that really stand out for you and have impacted you in a way that has changed your life?
No, that's a hard one that I'd have to think about, as in big momentous conversations. But definitely every conversation that I ever have, I remember most of them, and they tell me, a lot of people tell me that they get so much out of it, but I get something too. I take something away. I take away the pleasure of having known that person, met that person, seeing that person as a person who needs help, but who can get better, and is working towards getting better. No, I have to say that most of my conversations, they all have impact, because some of the things that we do are very insightful and
insightful. And I'm sure that you've helped provide insight and reflection to many people through conversations, and really help people that have been in places where they felt really alone to actually come to the other side and see that there's people around them that really care for them. I'm wondering if I can ask you a question around a time in your life that you felt most alone and the impact that someone's had for you.
Tynan, I think I've had a very privileged life in that I have not ever felt so down that I have to say I've loved every minute of life. I love living, even the downs, the being poor. There've been some hard things in my life, but I guess when I married young, I married a very supportive husband. Who would have been my rock beside me, allowing me to do the things that I've been able to achieve when he was here with us. So perhaps his death was one that I grieve for him, but I also have seen so much grieving from other families that have lost someone, that I know this is drawing on my own counselling skills. I know that we all at some stage in our life lose someone, and I was able to get through that. But always I know that whenever I'm down, I have wonderful friends around me and that support me. And having said that, that's why I feel privileged, because I know that there are a lot of people out there that don't have friends. When we say to people, supportive family and friends can help, there are people out there I know that don't have supportive family and friends, and it was my aim in life to ensure that anyone that I spoke with knew they weren't alone. They had at least me there. And I always tried to ensure that I followed up with that person when I had any conversations with them.
Thanks for sharing. And it sounds like you've got a really good supportive network around you. And from an early age, you somewhat, whether or not it was proactive or it came about, but you appreciated the benefit of having a good connection and being able to connect with people on that authentic approach has really helped. What does self-care look like for you in your world from a proactive nature with the work that you do, and sometimes being involved in sometimes some conversations that I guess for purpose of this, I'd probably class as a heavy conversation. How do you look after you, like continually being in those places?
Well, family, 5 sisters and a brother that are always there, and I know that they would support me wholeheartedly if I needed help. So having them, and in terms of also giving myself leisure time, I'm a ballroom dancer, as you know, and many years ago, if I came home from work and I had the beginnings of a headache or felt a bit stressed from work, if I danced that evening, the headache was gone, the stress was gone. That was my way of dealing with any stress, was dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Physicality is so important.
Dulcie, with the Edward Koch Foundation, or Dr. Edward Koch Foundation coming to, well, an end under your regime as CEO, I'm just wondering, is there anything that you'd have changed over the past 29 years?
Because of our lack of funding, which is why the foundation is drawing to a close, I think that maybe, 20, 30 years ago, we didn't so much focus on all of the policies and procedures that there is in place today, and just got on with it. But maybe I should have spent a bit of time securing more. I don't know how I could have done it, because I was always, and volunteers always, trying to secure funding. But I think that maybe we should have focused on that a bit more, in terms of trying to secure recurrent funding. Whatever we had to do, perhaps we were a bit maverick in that we just got things done back then without maybe those things which we all know and we need today to make things work.
I'm not talking an anarchic way of going about things. I'm sure when you formed the Dr. Edward Koch Foundation, there would have been a basic business plan outlining who you were, what you wanted to do, and how you're going to go about it, even if it was just conceptual rather than practical. How much does getting into the minutiae of policy and procedure get in the way of things? Because I understand that you have to plan for contingencies. Like, believe me, being an ex-police officer, I understand that. But sometimes these things get in the way. Why?
They always did with us, and that's why it probably didn't get done, because I saw other things much more important.
But I mean, was that a good thing? So what I'm asking, I suppose, is this risk adverse, policy focused culture that we live in now, is it counterproductive to service delivery?
I believe it is, but yeah, I think it is, but that's just an opinion that probably not a lot of people would agree with.
I'm really interested in just a little bit of a journey over the last 20 odd years, and some of the things that you've been really proud to be a part of and deliver. And I know that over time, like most recently, it's been the All of Us Festival, which has been amazing, but it didn't start there. Like, there's been so many amazing things that you've been the lead of. Just wondering if you can just walk us through some of those.
First of all, going back to 2008, our first National Suicide Prevention Conference here in Cairns. I was very proud of that achievement. we had 350 attendees at that, which was good for Cairns back in those years to have people come, and very educational, informative. There was lots of stuff that was community based within that, because the thing about the conference was I tried to keep it on different levels of academia and community based, so it went well. And following on from that was the 2012 and 2015 conference, and then it culminated in the World Federation for Mental Health conference. So that was a world conference, and I was just so proud of the Foundation's achievements that year, when we had presentations from 93 countries of the world. So that's one of the things that grew over the years. Another thing that springs to mind is the FNQ Suicide Prevention Week. We always have World Suicide Prevention Day on the 10th of September, and we always have Are You OK Day on the second Thursday in October. And so those 2 days always fall within the 1 week. So I came up with an idea that why don't we turn it, instead of into a day and another day, let's have a week of activities. So we did 2018, the FNQ Suicide Prevention Week, and we made sure that we had activities we had youth activities, we had activities for men, we had, that was a men's forum, we had morning teas out at Yarrabah for Indigenous people, we had every minority group that we could think of, Quack hosted. So how we did it was the task force coordinated it, and we tried to get organisations to host various events. So Quack had a barbecue for the for people LGBTIQ community plus communities and stuff like that, and that went on for every year after that with different projects. So those achievements I look back on and think, even during COVID, we came up with different ideas, like putting a suicide prevention is everyone's business in the windows of every business around town. And I'm delighted when I go past some of the offices now and still see those stickers in the windows of some businesses. And we also had a school art for our youth activity, that we had a school art competition where people sent in their art photos. The kids did artwork in chalk on footpaths in their school ground and so forth. So again, FNQ Suicide Prevention Week was one of those that I was proud of. And the other one was, which we won the National Award for Suicide Excellence in Suicide Prevention in 2018, was our 365 Reasons Why Not. And I think that was an amazing project where we sought to respond to the Netflix series 13 Reasons Why. And I think we did a pretty good job of involving young people all around Cairns and community in that.
You're very modest, Dulcie. I mean, if you come back to what you started off with the suicide prevention conference, if you look at the landscape of suicide prevention in this country, to bring something like that to Cairns when it was not being brought anywhere is a really, really massive contribution. And some of the other things that I would like to acknowledge and bring up is your work around establishing a First Nations bereavement group. I believe it's if not still the only, but the first one in Australia. Some of the other stuff has been some of the amazing resources that you've produced for people who are going through like suicidal crisis, or who are supporting someone to help them navigate the pathways that relate to our local region. Again, resources like that are still not readily available around the country. And yeah, it's really just been an amazing contribution that you've had for our region. Dulcie, my couple of final questions for you is, with all that you've achieved over many, many years, and we could probably spend an hour really just diving into the things that you have achieved. What's next, or what's left for you to achieve?
Well, I haven't completely given up work in that I'm open to discussion, but I'm retired as such, because I really do want to spend more time with my children and grandchildren. But I'm still open to projects and things that I can do still in the mental health area. I am still a master mental health first aid instructor, and intend to keep my hand in by having some first aid courses throughout the coming year. Just but yeah, just open to discussion.
That's great. And you are widely known and highly regarded for your training that you've delivered around the region, and the adaptations that you had to be able to deliver culturally appropriate to First Nations communities as well. Again, that's some revolutionary stuff. And I'm sure, Matt, you can put a link to get in contact with Dulcie for that first aid training and the other trainings that you've delivered. Dulcie, my final question for you is, what's your message for people who might be doing it tough, or people who just need a little boost? I mean, you've worked with so many people and you've heard so many stories.
I think that when I said earlier that so many people don't have good supportive friends and family, I would like to send a message to those people that in Australia we are privileged to have a lot of organisations working towards suicide prevention now, and that you can, if you know how, access services and support groups and support networks and things like that. So reach out and find those things, because they are there. Never, ever feel alone.
Yeah.
There is someone out there that will extend that hand to help.
That's beautiful. And Dulcie, as we wrap up, I really just want to acknowledge you for a couple of things. One, the amazing person that you've been, but for the inclusivity that you've really given to our region, and not distinguishing anyone to be any different from anyone else, but showing everyone that same level of compassion, that same level of care and support, and really trying to do the best you can to be, in many aspects, a pioneer for suicide prevention, a pioneer for mental health awareness, and really breaking down so much of the stigma that exists across the country, but particularly doing it for our region. And you've been tireless in that, and so persistent over so many years that you've touched the hearts and the lives of thousands of people, I'm sure. And I really want to honor you for being that, for being a beacon of hope, and a beacon of optimism, and a beacon of what's possible for not only for people, but a beacon of what's possible for people who have initiatives and things that they really want to stand up and go for, because something means something to them. And that's been behind you the whole way throughout your career, is that you go after things that mean something to you. And in many cases, your persistence and your determination sees that they do succeed. And I just really want to honor you for that. It's been an absolute privilege to get to know you over the last few years and observe you, and get to a place where I've been able to have some amazing conversations, but be witness to the legacy of Dulcie Bird. So I really just want to say thank you. It's been a privilege.
Amen.
Thank you very much for talking with me today. And I feel privileged to have known both of you and all of the other people that I've worked with in this field. There's a great lot of people out there doing great work, and I commend them all.